at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Suella survives. Rishi Sunak finds a backbone and ignores the Civil Service witch hunt to topple his Home Secretary over a speeding ticket. But as the woke blob and Brexit-hating MSM resume their mission to destroy Boris Johnson, the PM needs to man up and stop the incessant witch hunts threatening our democracy. My unfiltered verdict coming up in my digest in my superstar panel weigh-in. Tonight, I'm joined by Christine Hamilton, Adam Brooks and Matthew Laza. Also on the way, D-Day for Britain's immigration nation beckons tomorrow. But with fears net migration could top 1 million, is there a way to bring down those startling numbers urgently? Reform UK leader Richard Tice live with me in the studio shortly. Well, Sunak certainly talked the talk on migration as he took on Slippery Starmer at PMQs today.
The Prime Minister stood on 3 Tory manifestos. Each one promised to reduce immigration. Each promise broken.
He believes in an open-door migration policy.
But will the PM actually follow through on his rhetoric? That's our big debate later. Elsewhere on the show, as Meghan sips another awards ceremony amid Prince Harry's costly court defeat, is the Duchess planning a slow separation from her husband? Well, Harry's biographer Angela Levin reveals her bombshell verdict on that soon. Plus, I'll get an update from the attorney behind the sensational legal effort to deport the Duke of Doak from America over claims he lied about not taking drugs on his visa application. Samuel Dewey live stateside in the next hour. With sources revealing that cops are searching a Portuguese lake for Madeleine McCann's pink pyjamas and other clues, should the UK taxpayer still be paying for the Scotland Yard detectives to investigate this heartbreaking mystery, even though it's 16 years on? Well, campaigner Norman Brennan, former Crime Watch presenter Sue Cook and commentator Bushra Sheikh are going to do battle on that in the clash. Also coming up, as ITV publicly denies this Scove sacking claim from our very own Eamon Holmes.
Right, all this nonsense about giving him credit. I've decided to step down. I'm sure you did. Sure you did. Here's your P45. Now step down.
Britain's favourite entertainer, Jim Davidson, uncancelled to reveal all about his fiery encounter with Philip on This Morning. You're not going to want to miss that. And breaking tonight, the world mourns the Queen of Rock and Roll as Tina Turner dies, aged 83. Upset me, really upset me. And we're going to feature Tina, of course, when we crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass later in the show. Plus, I'll show you how tomorrow's newspaper front pages are covering what is a huge breaking entertainment story. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel, and as you've just been hearing, tributes are pouring in for music legend Tina Turner, who has sadly died aged 83. The legendary singer, affectionately known as the Queen of Rock and Roll, died after a long illness at her home near Zurich in Switzerland. Born Anna Mae Bullock in Tennessee, the American-Swiss singer's stellar career spanned 6 decades, during which she won 8 Grammy Awards and sold more than 1 million records worldwide. Her autobiography, I, Tina, was turned into the heartbreaking and heart-wrenching 1993 film, What's Love Got to Do with It? It dramatised the mum of two's famously turbulent relationship with her ex-husband, also now deceased, Ike Turner. The icon's resilience and awe-inspiring talent, I mean, what a voice, served as an inspiration to millions. And as she once said, my legacy is that I stayed on course from the beginning to the end because I believed in something inside of me. Tina, you were simply the best.
You're with GB News, our top story tonight. South Wales police have said their nearest vehicle was half a mile away when 2 teenage boys were killed in a crash in Cardiff on Monday evening. CCTV footage appears to show a police van following an e-bike before the fatal incident. The deaths of 16-year-old Kyrie Sullivan and 15-year-old Harvey Evans sparked rioting in the Ely area of the city. Hundreds of bunches of flowers were left by the side of the road by friends and family, and tonight there was a candlelit vigil to remember the 2 boys who lost their lives. Now, Rishi Sunak has said today the latest inflation figures show the government is making progress on his promise to halve it. His comments come as new data showed inflation fell to 8.7% last month. That's the first time the figure has fallen below 10% since last August. However, with food price inflation continuing at a near record 19.1%, Labour has accused the government today of failing to help struggling families. Now to Portugal, where GB News understands the authorities hunting for clues in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann will continue their search for a 3rd day tomorrow. Police have today been using mechanical undergrowth cutters, radar, rakes and poles, and were seen removing a number of sealed bags from the scene. Investigators are looking for any sign that the 3-year-old was at the Arade Dam and Reservoir, which was visited a number of times by the prime suspect in the case, Christian Bruckner. Now, in the United States, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is set to announce he's entering the race for the 2024 presidential elections. He's filed the paperwork and is expected to announce the news at an event with the billionaire Elon Musk on Twitter this evening. The 44-year-old will stand against candidates, including his main rival, Donald Trump, for the Republican nomination. Now, a man who was paralysed more than a decade ago has regained the ability to walk simply by thinking about it. Neuroscientists in Switzerland have used artificial intelligence to create what they call a wireless digital bridge between the brain and the spinal cord. They say it converts thoughts of movement into actual movement. After being paralysed in a bicycle accident in China, Gert-Jan Oxam can now stand, walk and even climb stairs. Now, as you were hearing from Dan just a short time ago, one of rock and roll's most famous voices, Tina Turner, has died in Zurich at the age of 83 after a long illness. You're simply the best. Better than all the rest. In a career spanning a phenomenal 60 years, the American-Swiss singer had hits including Simply the Best, What's Love Got to Do with It, Nutbush City Limits and, of course, Proud Mary. She sold more than 180 million albums, won 12 Grammy Awards and has a star both on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the St. Louis Walk of Fame. She'd suffered with ill health in recent years, diagnosed with cancer in 2016 and having a kidney transplant in 2017. Tina Turner, who died today. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So happy 3-year anniversary to the moment Westminster's woke blob officially declared war on the democratically elected government of the United Kingdom. So as then Prime Minister Boris Johnson unwisely supported his top advisor Dominic Cummings, the official civil service Twitter account posted this: arrogant and offensive. Can you imagine having to work with these truth twisters? And from that moment on, the civil service conspired with the craven Brexit-hating MSM, especially The Guardian, the British-bashing corporation Woke ITV and Sly News, to bring down Boris in a farcical Partygate witch hunt where, most conveniently forget, the current serving Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also received a fixed penalty notice. Once they succeeded, it was the turn of Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab, thanks to a spurious bullying probe. And now they're determined to finish off the Brexit Spartan Suella Braverman, a Home Secretary on a mission to stop the boats and bring down net migration. All of this is completely transparent and disgustingly anti-democratic. And while Sunak has stared down the pitchfork-waving Suella haters for now, the mission has turned to finish off the political career of Boris Johnson forever. That is the only explanation for the Cabinet Office to hand over via Boris's own lawyers his checkers diaries to the police without permission, which has resulted in 2 fresh investigations by the Met and Thames Valley Police. And Boris threatening to sue the Cabinet Office. I say good on him. Do it. What a monumental waste of police time. I mean, the police in this country should be focusing on solving violent crime. But the woke blob and Sunak government don't mind, given all they care about is crushing Boris's hopes of a Churchillian second actor number 10. Now, his spokesperson insists nothing illegal went on, and this whole thing is a politically motivated witch hunt, which his sister Rachel and former cabinet colleague Jacob Rees-Mogg have both backed up.
He has questions to answer. He will definitely be answering them. As far as I'm aware, all the rules were followed whenever I went to Chequers.
There are some people who will never rest until they have hounded Boris further and further. The latest stories are just another example of how those who don't like Boris, mainly because of Brexit, are always looking for something to have a go at him on. It is a supreme non-story. But like clockwork, now the ludicrous Labour Party media cycle continues.
If they've come across evidence that there was flagrant rule breaking, as we've seen reported, I do think Boris Johnson should be held accountable for it. And it's no good Boris Johnson and his allies constantly whinging and crying like overgrown babies, saying, oh, this is a terrible plot and the civil service blob are out to get us and people are just mean.
Well, actually, Wes, it is very concerning that an unelected group of civil servants believe they are running the country, believe they have the power to finish political careers and frustrate the manifesto pledges to which the Conservatives were elected on a landslide in 2019. But I know what this is really about. Boris Johnson would beat Keir Starmer's socialist coalition of chaos at the next election. The Labour Party knows it. The Guardian knows it. The civil service knows it. They want to make his return impossible. And while that might be good for the Prime Minister, Sunak has to man up here and stop the incessant witch hunts against our Brexiteer leaders before British democracy is destroyed. To respond now, my superstar panel, the broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Christine, I am getting so fed up with this, and I can understand why Boris Johnson says, I'm just going to sue them.
My guess is that the average man in the street or woman in the street actually just thinks yawn, yawn, more cake, more Partygate, more whatever. Boris's problem is that he did make the rules. They were so complicated. If you did something on a Monday, it was OK. You did it on a Tuesday, it wasn't. The whole thing was ridiculous. But what Rishi needs to realise is, and I don't share your view that Boris can come back as leader, I'm afraid, because I just think the whole thing's been a soap opera. They've changed parties. They've changed leaders so many times. They honestly cannot, unless Rishi blows up in some extraordinary way. So I just don't think that can happen. But, I mean, they're like rats in a sack. They really are. The Tory party is holed below the waterline. If they don't pull together, they will all hang separately. And Rishi needs to know that he needs Boris. And he needs to protect Boris, because if Boris goes ballistic and starts suing the government and really putting the knife in because he's just had enough, then Rishi's going to be the one who suffers. I mean, it's his premiership that's going.
But, Adam, I don't blame him for having enough. I mean, look at what happened to Dominic Raab. Now, Dominic Raab, on the right of the Tory party, a good, honest Brexiteer, he was Rishi Sunak's closest personal and political ally last year during his leadership campaign, and Rishi Sunak still allowed him to be thrown under the bus. So if you're Boris Johnson, you're very worried with these developments.
100%, and I think Boris should sue the Cabinet Office. I think it would maybe put a stop to some of this leaking and confidential information coming out. These civil servants need to know that, you know, they're there to do their job. They're not there to shape governments or decide what ministers do what.
They think they're running the country.
Exactly. But one thing about Rishi Sunak, he not only looks like a school prefect and sounds like a school prefect, you know...
Looks like a civil servant.
He possibly is the weakest Prime Minister that we've had in decades.
Yeah, because he's letting them control him.
And I speak about colleagues in my industry, and I don't know anyone that's going to vote for this Conservative Party under Rishi Sunak. Now...
Exactly, which is why I disagree with Christine. Because you can say, oh, we can't have another leadership challenge. We can't go back to that psychodrama. But Boris was elected Prime Minister. He's different to anyone else. He was elected in 2019.
A lot of these MPs will be looking around October, November at the polls. Now, if they're 20 points behind, the Conservatives are finished for a decade. So... Boris is probably the only one that saves them their job. And at some point, they're going to have to hold their nose and decide if they want a job and to save the party or go with Rishi.
Matthew Lazar, I know that this is good for the Labour Party. I know why Wes Streeting is rubbing his hands with glee in that interview. But can you not put party politics for one side for just 1 second and acknowledge how disturbing it is that the woke snivel service now seem to think that they're running the country?
Well, I think there is. I think that the tweet sent by Renegade during lockdown was clearly out of order. But the fact of the fact...
But it shows what they really think, Matthew. You've got to admit that. This was someone who had access to the official UK civil service Twitter account.
I think the point then was about Cummings, and the point now is the rules apply to everybody.
But what was Cummings doing? He was standing up to the blob, right?
When he wasn't in Barnard Castle, ignoring the rules that he'd set.
Who cares about that?
But the point is...
it doesn't matter what it was
the
about.
rules apply to everybody. Look, and this government thinks the rules don't apply to them.
What they're doing to Rishi is what the Democrats are doing to Trump. They're trying to stop Boris have any angle about coming back. So it's just about smearing him and taking him out the game.
It's also, there's this, what seems to me, is very unhealthy relationship between the civil service, who, when I was growing up, I mean, the idea that the civil service wasn't totally trustworthy, totally impartial, would have just been unheard of.
And this is going to lead to very bad
things with the press. Very serious links with senior civil servants and senior journalists who are reporting on it.
And by the way, lots of them have personal relationships, shall we say, Christine Hamilton. Indeed, or brothers or sisters of people. Christine Hamilton, Adam Brooks, Matthew Lazar, do stand by. My superstar panel with me all night. But coming up, tomorrow is D-Day for Britain in its battle against becoming an immigration nation. But how bad will these figures actually be? And is there a way to bring the migration numbers down as a matter of urgency? Reform UK leader Richard Tice live in the studio on that soon. But up next in The Clash, as sources reveal cops are searching a Portuguese lake for Madeleine McCann's pink pyjamas, should the UK taxpayer be funding Scotland Yard detectives on a fresh hunt for clues 16 years on? Former top copper and campaigner Norman Brennan, ex-Crime Watch presenter Sue Cook and social commentator Bushra Sheikh, who blames the McCanns for leaving their toddler alone, are going to do battle on this next. But what do you think? Dan at gbnews.com. Vote in our poll at GBNews on Twitter. The Clash, straight after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Richard Tice, Angela Levin and Jim Davidson all on the way. But first, the clash. And 16 years after her disappearance, the latest search for Madeleine McCann is well underway at a remote Portuguese reservoir in the Algarve. German, Portuguese and British police all on site and crucially hunting for the pink pyjamas Maddie was wearing on the night she vanished. Cops were last night pictured taking away a number of evidence bags to examine Portuguese newspaper. Expresso today revealed these searches have their origin in a tip from an informant who the police force considers very credible and that the German police took very seriously. The reservoir sparked fresh interest after detectives obtained videos of chief suspect Christian Brockner visiting the beauty spot. The imprisoned German rapist, who lived just down the road at the time Maddie went missing, called the rural hideaway his little paradise. And a source close to the investigation tonight revealed that he visited the reservoir in the days after Maddie vanished. But the continued involvement of British police, funded by the UK taxpayer to the tune of over £13 million so far, has divided the nation. So let's have an honest debate about this tonight. Should we still be paying for Scotland Yard detectives to help in a fresh hunt for Maddie 16 years on? Dan at gbnews.com is my email. You can tweet in our poll at GB News on Twitter. The results shortly, but to tackle this now, Director of the Law and Order Foundation, Norman Brennan, social commentator, Bushra Sheikh. But first, to the former Crime Watch presenter, Sue Cook. So, Sue, over the course of your career, you've covered so many cases like this. However, I think you probably agree, very few disappearances have sparked the collective involvement of the British people than Madeleine McCann. However, Sue,
there is a growing anger about the money that is still being poured into this case. Where do you stand on whether this search should be funded by British taxpayers?
Well, I think we have to go with it now, don't we? It's been so long now. We've had 16 years. And as you say, £13 million has been spent on it. I did a bit of research knowing that I was going to be on here later this evening. And when I realised it was £13 million, I must say I was shocked at the huge amount of money that it's cost. But since we've got so far down the line, and this particular investigation does sound very promising, the informant that the German police say that they've got investing a lot of confidence in, we've got to take it through. And Jerry and Kate have gone through so much agony, really, this last few years. People have accused them of being suspects. The Portuguese police were really unpleasant with them. They've, apart from just the grief of the uncertainty and losing their daughter for such a long, not knowing what's happened to their daughter for such a long time, it would be so good for not just for them, but for all of us. We were all very invested in trying to find Maddie. People keep coming up, don't they, saying they claim they've found Maddie somewhere. And once again, the parents go through hell again, thinking, could this be it? Could she still be alive? We've got now, I think, to carry on and see if we can get closure with this particular investigation, which does sound promising.
I absolutely understand where you're coming from, Sue. Bushra Sheikh, you feel very differently about this, and I want to be honest about it because your feeling is a feeling that many people contact me with, and you think that because the McCanns made a mistake in terms of leaving Maddie that night on the Algarve, that the search should not be funded by the British public?
Absolutely, Dan. And I've always maintained the fact that I sympathise with the McCanns ultimately, but I just want to address the elephant in the room. This boils down to irresponsible, bad parenting. Unfortunately, that is the case. And with the McCann, they have to live with that for the rest of their lives if they do not ever find Maddie. I do not believe that it is the responsibility of the UK public to be endorsing and paying for this anymore. 16 years down the line, unfortunately, when it comes to becoming a parent, you have to be the individuals that minimise the risk for your children. To go and dine when you have the opportunity of having a babysitter for your children, to me, is absolutely unforgivable. And so lots of people do feel this. So 16 years on, £13 million by the taxpayer, I believe that is enough. And, we do have to address this. I believe people have also learned from the McCanns that you have to put your children first, and they have to live with this now.
So, Norman Brennan, you've heard two very different sides of the argument there, and it certainly is how a lot of Brits feel. Where do you come down on, Norman?
Well, I've met about 1,000 families bereaved by homicide and represented several hundred personally. Denise Bolger, Sarah Payne, Damilola Taylor, many others. I would never criticise a family. I've represented families where they perhaps, or one has been acted irresponsibly. When you've lost a child or had a child murdered, that must be pushed to one side. What I will say is that, in my opinion, the amount of money is absolutely unprecedented for to find a missing person. Now, I don't mean to be funny or awkward on this, but I've heard the headlines so many times in the news over the past 16 years that I now rarely pay much attention to it. The only time I will pay attention is if Madeleine is found alive, God willing, or sadly, she is found, because it will put to rest. But the thing is, I deal with families that are begging for counselling. I represented Leslie Ann Downey's family. She was murdered by Myra Hindley and Ian Brady. Keith Bennett was never ever found. Since then, there's been the sporadic search for him. But this is unprecedented, £13 million. And I think the public are losing sympathy because of the cost. And 16 years on, there is a lot more that can be done for families bereaved by homicide, having children murdered, and many of them feel that they're being ignored. And when they see so much money being spent, they say, hang on, what about us? And there are other missing children as well.
And Sue Cook, that is one of the main points that I hear, because Why does this case deserve all of this attention when there are so many other families suffering?
Well, I think every child's life is beyond price, isn't it? I think no amount of money is too great for any child. There are a lot of children, yes, you're quite right. There are a lot of children who've gone missing, and we should spend money finding all of them. And, you know, it's a very difficult decision. But as I say, since we've got this far down the line with this investigation, I don't know why it's cost so much money, but since we've got this far down the line, but all children are worth it. No child is beyond price. We must spend as much as we can. And also justice should be done too. This perpetrator needs to be brought to justice.
OK. Bushra, a final word to you?
Brought to justice.
Yeah,
yeah. Do you know what? I think it's important to also address that, you know, the public are angry at the McCanns, and there are people that have been angry with them for years, simply because we know how important it is to be the right parent and the right type of parent. And of course, I can sit here and give them condolences for the situation. For 16 years and £13 million, I think it's way too much.
OK, fascinating discussion. That is the social commentator Bushra Sheikh, director of the Law and Order Foundation Norman Brennan, social commentator and former Crime Watch presenter Sue Cook. But who do you agree with? Should we still be funding the Madeleine McCann investigation 16 years on? Joyce on Twitter says thousands of children missing every year. If the family had been from a council estate, this would not be ongoing. From Diane, no, the McCanns need to fund any further investigations themselves now. And from Karen on Twitter, yes, we should carry on for as long as it takes to find out what happened to Maddie. Her long-suffering parents need to know. Your verdict is now in. This will surprise a lot of people, I think. Just 24% of you think that taxpayers should still be funding this investigation of Madeleine McCann's disappearance. 76% of you say we should not. Coming up, Meghan skipped another woke awards ceremony last night after her and Harry's fake car chase humiliation overshadowed the previous one. But after the Duke's costly court loss, is the Duchess planning to ditch her husband's? Harry's biographer Angela Levin gives her unflinching view soon. But first, tomorrow is D-Day for Britain and its battle against becoming an immigration nation. But will the legal migration figures really reach 1 million? And can the country bring the numbers down urgently? Reform UK leader Richard Tice live with me in the studio after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Angela Levin in just a moment, but first it's Immigration D-Day tomorrow, where legal net migration figures to Britain are expected to reach at least 700,000, more than doubling from pre-Brexit levels. Now, the record number would dwarf last year's previous high of 500,000, with a portion of this year's intake coming from 200,000 refugees from Ukraine. The Daily Telegraph suggests the recent spike comes from migration numbers simply being underestimated in recent years, which is perhaps even more concerning. The PM this week vowed to get tough, including by banning families of foreign students coming over to live in the UK. And he wrote in the Daily Telegraph today, "I have a very clear view on immigration. It must be legal, it must be controlled, it must be fair. And fundamentally, net migration needs to come down." Well, one man with a keen eye on Britain's migration headache is Richard Tice, leader of Reform UK. So, Richard Tice, are we now just an immigration nation? Is that what these numbers tomorrow released at 9:30 a.m. are going to prove?
These numbers will be the most shocking that the country has ever seen and will prove the great lie from Tory manifesto, Tory Prime Minister, 3-4 times in the last 13 years. The great lie of Boris's Brexit campaign with the referendum, take back control of our borders. The truth is, tomorrow's numbers, give or take, will be the size of Birmingham last year. It'll be the same or more this year, another Birmingham. This is completely unsustainable.
So is Rishi Sunak
at every single level.
Here?
Like all Tory Prime Ministers, he's all talk, he's all waffle, and this sort of latest sticking plaster will make no difference whatsoever.
Because
the
what's
truth
so
is, it's completely out of control. They told us they would take back control of our borders and they would bring the numbers down. They deliberately opened the borders. They've created a total open border policy. And surprise, surprise, when the doors open, lots of people are coming here because for all the reasons, including the ease on which you can sign up for benefits and all sorts of other very generous perks and things.
Well, yeah, and I just doubt how seriously Rishi Sunak actually
He's not serious at all.
Because I don't know if you remember, a few days ago, when he was on the plane over to the G7 summit in Japan, he was asked by the reporters in this huddle, without his PR advisors able to script an answer for him, whether he cared about these record net migration figures. And actually, he didn't really seem to. He said, oh no, my focus is on illegal immigration, my focus is on stopping the boats. Now, what's happened over the last few days is clearly his advisors have said this is a political disaster, so he's toughened up his language, but it doesn't seem to come from his heart.
Because he's totally out of touch. He has no empathy, no understanding whatsoever. He's lost control of illegal immigration, which should be zero. He's completely, deliberately given up and created an open borders policy.
So what would you do to bring it down?
I've said very clearly, our policy is net zero immigration. Every year, about 400,000 people emigrate, and that should be the number that we allow.
So one in, one out.
One in, one out.
You could easily organise that.
I think that's a good idea.
We've got a record population. We've got a record number of people on out-of-work benefits. I tell you what, why don't we train our own people and get them back into work and the dignity?
Well, isn't it true that we're not even building enough houses for these new people? I think we built something like 200,000 houses
We're building about
last year.
200,000 homes a year, which doesn't even look... We've got an affordable housing crisis. We've got a healthcare crisis.
Where are these people going to live?
Exactly.
And do they push Brits out of their homes?
Of course they do. So the price of housing to rent or buy is soaring. The whole thing's a catastrophe, not to mention the impact on the British culture, the British heritage, the British history, which is so important, and the British identity. All of this is a disaster.
I want to move on to talk about Gary Lineker, because this is the BBC's biggest star presenter. We have to, unfortunately, because what he's doing is so shocking, Richard. So he went over to collect this Amnesty International award from Italy. Now he's given a highly politicised interview with Channel 4 News tonight, the left-wing Channel 4 News, supporting the Just Stop Oil protesters. Watch this.
They do stuff knowing that they'll probably be locked up, and I kind of admire that in a way. And I know it angers a lot of people, but that's kind of what they want, because it's the only way it gets publicised, and it's the only reason we're talking about it now. And I think that's important. And I think if we manage to save this, save the human race from 50 years or 100 years' time, and we still exist, they'll look back on these. And they'll look back on people like that, and Greta Thunberg and people like that have made a real difference, and they might well be the heroes.
Give me
Richard,
a break.
You
What
had
a
your
prat.
head in your hands.
He has not a
that.
clue what he's talking about. The man is a clown. He's not a great football commentator, in my view. He has no idea what he's talking about with regard to the climate debate. There is no climate emergency. There is no climate crisis. It's absolutely absurd what he's saying.
BBC is just
what they're
ignoring
doing,
this
they're
now,
deliberately scaring people and terrifying young people in the same way Boris Johnson's government deliberately terrified people with lockdowns. Why do you think we've got a mental health crisis? Clowns like that, damaging people and talking nonsense and worrying people.
Still earning over £1 million a year, though, of our money.
If he wants to go into politics and get elected, fine. But the taxpayer should not be paying him. Fine. Yeah. We shouldn't be paying him to spout that garbage.
Totally. Leave the BBC like the other lefties did. John Sopel, Emily Maitlis. Just do not do it at the BBC. Speaking of ridiculous political figures, though, I'm sure you saw this yesterday from the Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey. But in case not, this is what he said when asked if a woman can have a penis.
Vast majority of people whose biological sex is a woman when they were birth, they feel they're women, so they get the same they feel their gender the same as at birth. But there's a very small number of people who don't feel like that.
So a woman can have a penis?
Well, quite clearly.
Quite clearly.
So we've now got two leaders of major parties in this country, right, who think that women can have a penis. They are not fit to govern this country. And many, many millions of women are offended and feel deeply, deeply discriminated against. It's utterly appalling. Again, another man who's talking complete garbage. He knows it's not true, but he hasn't got the guts and the courage to tell the truth. Is that really the sort of leader we want running this country? I don't think so.
It's probably going to be the next Deputy Prime Minister, though, isn't he?
Well, let's hope not.
Very worrying times for the country.
I mean, look, the whole thing is just absurd. These people, they won't tell the truth. They won't be honest with the British people. And if they can't be honest about something as simple as that, what else are they not going to tell the truth about?
Richard Tice, leader of Reform UK, so great to have you here tonight. But coming up, as Rishi Sunak stands up for Suella Braverman against the woke blob, finally, over that pathetic speeding ticket row, does he now need to do the same thing for Boris Johnson after the Partygate witch hunt was revived? My superstar panel return to debate that soon. But next, as Meghan skips another awards ceremony amid Prince Harry's costly court defeat, is the Duchess planning a slow separation from her husband? Well, Harry's biographer Angela Levin has a bombshell verdict on this. She's going to reveal all straight after this.
I I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Tomorrow's newspaper front page is hot off the press in just a moment. But first, the latest on the Sussex psychodrama with esteemed royal biographer. She's written the books on Prince Harry and the Queen, Angela Levin. And it's been 5 years since Harry and Meghan tied the knot in a joyous Windsor ceremony, but their marriage has been far from the fairy tale story we all imagined that day. The Perma victim pair failed to even acknowledge their wedding anniversary on Friday, and their fake New York car chase has reduced them to a global laughing stock. Fresh off the back of reports the couple are, quote, frazzled, Meghan skipped yet another glitzy awards ceremony last night, despite winning a gong, God knows how, for that awful Archetypes podcast. Must have been a fix. It came hours after the Ginger Whinger Harry embarrassingly lost a high-profile court case against the UK government over his bid to hire Met police officers for private protection, a blunder reported to have cost him a cool £500,000. But this is what's going to make you really angry. It's cost us, the British taxpayer, £200,000. And with the Duchess of Delusion's notable lack of public support for her beau, including snubbing him a kiss at the basketball, there we go, failing to attend the coronation and being absent from his book tour, not all appears well. So Angela Levin, 5 years into this marriage, you have some information about what you think's going on here.
Yes, I just want to say that I was one of the few presenters of the wedding for CNN,
And I just know how wonderful it was, how everyone was so happy for him. At last he'd found someone who he loved and who could cope with the spotlight.
That was one of the greatest days, wasn't it? It was one of the greatest days. The whole country came together, and it totally puts pay to their suggestion that the UK is some sort of racist hellhole, because actually it was the most positive day I remember in this country since the 2012 London Olympics.
Yes, and it was a very, very happy time. But it's just disintegrated very badly. Now, if we look back to that day, we discovered later that Meghan was already planning to leave before actually she got married. She had all sorts of things
Leave the
ready.
UK.
Leave the UK. So I think she's a careful planner and plotter. And my feeling is this, that Harry is actually doing something that is negative, that's upsetting, that will make him feel that he hasn't succeeded, that is very lowering. And Meghan is going the other way and going around in gold and going to perhaps get a big part in a film and having a very good new agent. So she is absolutely separating from him. As you said, she hasn't been anywhere where he really needed her. He's got a mental health issue and he needs somebody there to prop him up. Anyone would, actually, but she keeps away. So he's doing all the nasty stuff and she's sailing on ahead. And I think that's the beginning of the end of it for him, because she's planning that actually if she could be planning, my feeling is this is what she's doing, is that, you know, she was making sure that he's in a hopeless situation so that she can get the children and so that he can't actually...
And he's completely isolated now from all of his family and his friends.
Because also he's got rooms in hotels. He's got one room permanently available for him that's quite expensive.
Yeah, what's
a hotel.
that about?
Well, I think either she's shouting at him to get out or he can't take it and it's there. But I think if you have a row in your marriage, if you've got a garden full of places where visitors can stay, you've got 16 bathrooms, you've got 9, 10 bedrooms, you perhaps, you know, might go into another room, but actually you're not going to go out and go somewhere else. And he's got another one in a hotel which has got a gym. And he's there. If you book it permanently, that means you're going to use it a lot. So he's not in the family house anymore. And I think that that's all what's going to happen. How he will manage, if it does happen, is quite worrying, I think. But I think we'll get a sudden bolt, like she did with her first husband, sent the engagement and wedding ring back in an envelope.
And you say that this is why King Charles is playing very softly with Harry, because obviously William, we know, is furious, and I totally understand why. I totally support William's decision to cut Harry off after what he's done, but you say King Charles is leaving the lines of communication open because he's so worried about Harry's fragile state.
I felt this for a long time, and I think, you know, people say that he's too soft. He's not soft, but he's got a son and he's very concerned about him. And anyone around him can see that he's not happy. If you saw him even in the taxi, Meghan was smiling away as if it was a sort of photo shoot, actually. And he looked absolutely terrified. And he just looked sad and very, very unhappy. And I think that his father's very aware of this.
But he is an adult, Angela. I mean, can we have sympathy for him?
Well, I mean, I've been very annoyed with him and seen he's just changed so much, he's unrecognisable. But I think when someone is right on the bottom, I think you've got to be a little bit cautious about.
So the dream move to California has basically ended up a nightmare for Harry.
Yes, absolutely. It is a nightmare. He hasn't got friends there. He hasn't got a job there, really. He's advising people on mental health, God help them. And what he's doing is going backwards in time to do one court case after another, which he's failing and which he won't win at all of them 20 years ago.
I know, but this is where I get angry,
negative. It's so negative.
I know, but this is where I get angry, right? Because, fine, he can waste his own money, Angela, right? So he's just lost £500,000 because of this futile second case he took against the Home Office when we all knew he was going to lose. He'd already lost one. But it's the fact that it's costing us
Yeah.
£200,000
I thought it was 300,000 actually.
Goodness, that's even worse.
Yes, I mean it is appalling, and we can't forgive him.
Infuriating.
But this man doesn't know what to do, where he is, how to manage it. He can't manage his wife. He can't manage the relationship because he looks. If you watch when they're together, he runs around as if he's a servant, not as if he's a husband. He's got to make sure that she comes out all right and opens the door.
So you don't think it's a balanced relationship?
I don't think it's ever been a balanced relationship. I think from the first day they went on an engagement, which I went with them, I think that you could see Nottingham. That's right. Took me on that one first. He obviously liked it very much. And
but you had fears even then about Meg.
I felt, yes. Well, she kept pushing him out the way and wanted to shake hands with him on first. And at that stage, they weren't married even, and nobody really wanted to talk to her. They wanted to talk to
Angela would say that just makes her a really modern woman, and Harry, as this sensitive new age guy, wants to support his wife.
It's not good manners. And actually, if you come into a different country, into a royal home, it's nothing like what you have in America. So you watch. If you went to a job, you wouldn't say, I've got to be number one and I'm not listening to anyone. What you do is that you sit quietly for a bit and you gradually see, and then you make suggestions. Her ideas that she could have put through would have been very happily accepted, but she can't wait. She's got to be out there in the front. And so you don't do that. It's not the way you do it. So you wait, and she didn't wait, you see. And you don't push somebody out the way so you can get there first because you're more important.
The problem for Harry is that these court cases, which he thinks is like this life's mission to bring down the British press, which, by the way, in the US does not go down well because of the First Amendment. They believe of freedom in the press in America. But this case, I've been following it a little bit, the case against the Mirror Group newspapers. This is not looking good for him. You know, the whole case seems to be collapsing, and he's got to go and give evidence next month.
Yeah.
This could make him a laughingstock yet again.
But it's so naive to think that he, when he doesn't live in the country, can try and change the way that the whole press operates. It's not going to happen, is it? You have to swallow a lot of it and take no notice, or you live a life where you're quiet, you're away from this. To go to Hollywood and be where all the press are and are allowed to be is a nonsense. If you want quiet and you don't want to be in the press, he told me he wanted to go to Africa and look after animals that were risking being, no law. You do that sort of thing in the life, but Meghan won't ever have anything to do with that.
They always talk about all of these good things they want to do. Oh, we were going to go to New Zealand, we were going to go to Canada, we were going to go to Africa, but at the end of the day, it's all talk. I'm sorry, Angela, because when push came to shove, it's all about this, it's all about the greenback, it's all about
all about money.
And money don't make you happy.
Never makes you happy, but I don't think anything will make Meghan happy because she will always want more. She'll always look around, she'll see other women who've got a bigger diamond or a more expensive dress or more bathrooms than 16, and that's what she wants.
Angela Levin, Prince Harry's biographer. Fascinating stuff. Thank you, Angela. We will speak next week.
Thank you.
But coming up, with a sensational legal effort to deport Harry from America over those claims that he lied about his drug taking on his visa application, I'm going to speak to the attorney who's behind all of this, Samuel Dewey, live with me in the next hour. But first, as Rishi Sunak finally grows a backbone and stands up for Suella Braverman, does he now need to do the same for Boris Johnson against the woke blob? My superstar panel return to debate that next. Plus, we're going to have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. I'm sure they're covering the very sad death of the great Tina Turner. Find out in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Rishi Sunak has finally stood up to the woke blob after announcing that Suella Braverman would not be probed over the speeding ticket farce. So, was he right to call this out as a storm in a civil service teacup? But does he need to do the same thing now to protect Boris Johnson? That's the big debate with my superstar panel. And tonight, I'm joined by Christine Hamilton, Adam Brooks and Matthew Laza. Then, on the eve of D-Day for immigration nation Britain, with record figures due to be published tomorrow, Sunak and Starmer went toe-to-toe at PMQs.
The Prime Minister stood on 3 Tory manifestos. Each one promised to reduce immigration. Each promise broken.
He believes in an open-door migration policy.
That might be the case, but what is Sunak doing to reduce these numbers, or is he all just talk? We're going to thrash that one out later in the Media Buzz. Plus, after deserting his royal responsibilities in the UK, could Prince Harry be facing an astonishing deportation from America for failing to disclose his drug use in his visa application? Well, the attorney behind this hugely significant inquiry, Samuel Dewey, is going to be with me to give an exclusive update on this bombshell case. Also on the way, X This Morning presenter Eamon Holmes, now of this parish, has been cutting through the media spin this week as he exposed the Philip Schofield circus for what it really is.
Right, all this nonsense about giving him credit. I've decided to step down. I'm sure you did. Sure you did. Here's your P45. Now step down.
But as ITV officially responds denying that Scof has got the sack, is the woke broadcast continuing to take its viewers for mugs? Legendary comic Jim Davidson, who has previously clashed with Philip on This Morning, who hasn't, takes us behind the scenes of the daytime bloodbath. That's uncancelled later. Plus, a ghastly This Morning interview with Prime Minister David Cameron has re-emerged and gone viral. This is where Schofield heads the witch hunt against Tory politicians who were falsely accused of being paedophiles.
Have those names there. Those are the names on a piece of paper.
There is a danger, if we're not careful, that this could turn into a sort of witch hunt.
Well, Cameron's former top aide, Craig Oliver, has just lifted the lid on that appalling incident. I'll show you what he has to say on Schofield. It's very eye-opening shortly. And breaking tonight, the Queen of Rock and Roll, Tina Turner, has died aged 83. We're going to pay tribute to the music icon later in the show, and I have a good feeling she's going to be nominated as an honorary Greatest Britain. The first front pages will arrive in mere moments too. We'll see how they're covering that very sad news right after the headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Good
Good evening. You're with GB News. The top story tonight. South Wales police have said their nearest vehicle was half a mile away when the 2 boys in Cardiff were killed in a crash on Monday evening. CCTV footage appears to show a police van following an e-bike before the fatal incident. The deaths of 16-year-old Kyrie Sullivan and 15-year-old Harvey Evans sparked rioting in the Ely area of the city. Hundreds of bunches of flowers were left at the roadside by friends and family, and tonight there's been a candlelit vigil in the area. Now, Rishi Sunak says the latest inflation figures show the government is making progress on his promise to halve it. His comments come as new data showed inflation fell to 8.7% last month. It's the first time the figure has fallen below 10% since last August. However, with food price inflation continuing at a near record 19.1%, Labour is accusing the government today of failing to help struggling families. Now, GB News understands the authorities in Portugal hunting for clues in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann will continue their search for a third day tomorrow. Police have been using mechanical undergrowth cutters, radar, rakes and poles today and were seen removing a number of sealed bags from the scene. Investigators are searching for any sign that the 3-year-old was at the Arade Dam and Reservoir, which was visited a number of times by the prime suspect in the case, Christian Bruckner. In the United States, the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is set to announce he's entering the race for the 2024 presidential elections. He's filed the paperwork and is expected to announce the news at an online event with the billionaire Elon Musk. It'll be on Twitter this evening. The 44-year-old plans to stand against candidates, including his main rival, Donald Trump, for the Republican nomination. Now, a medical breakthrough. A man who was paralysed for more than a decade has regained the ability to walk simply by thinking about it. Neuroscientists in Switzerland have used artificial intelligence to create what they call a wireless digital bridge between the brain and the spinal cord. They say it converts the thoughts of movement into actual movement. After being paralysed in a bicycle accident in China a decade ago, Gert-Jan Oksam can now stand, walk and even climb stairs. Now, as you've been hearing, one of rock and roll's most famous voices, Tina Turner, has died at the age of 83 after a long illness.
You're simply the best.
Tributes have been pouring in after a career spanning over 60 years. The American Swiss singer had hits including that one, Simply the Best, What's Love Got to Do With It, and Proud Mary. She sold more than 180 million albums worldwide, and she won 12 Grammy Awards. And she has a star on both the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the St. Louis Walk of Fame. Tina Turner had been suffering ill health in recent years. She was diagnosed with cancer in 2016 and she had a kidney transplant in 2017. Tina Turner, who died today. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. First front pages are in. The Metro leads with the Devil Baby, who led a terrifying stalking campaign against Premier League footballers, including England star Mason Mount. Model Orla Sloan pleaded guilty in court yesterday to stalking Mount and Billy Gilmore and harassing Ben Chilwell, and could face jail time. The Independent leads with a row which has erupted as the COVID public inquiry threatens the Cabinet Office with legal action if they don't hand over Boris Johnson's WhatsApp messages. The Daily Express reports Scotland Yard's verdict that Boris Johnson did not break any rules as photos circulate of the PM at a leaving do during lockdown. Who cares? And the Daily Star. Well, it was the obvious headline today, wasn't it? Simply the Best, paying tribute to Tina Turner, the Queen of Rock and Roll, dead at 83. My Superstar panel return now. The broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Now, Rishi Sunak showed he has some type of backbone today after he stood by Suella Braverman against an all-out attack from the British deep state. The craven MSM and the Civil Service have again conspired to bring down the Home Secretary, trumping up claims that she broke the ministerial code by seeking special treatment over a speeding ticket. But Braverman clarified matters in a letter to the PM. It was exhaustive. Part of it, she said, I sought to explore whether bespoke arrangements were possible given my personal circumstances. As a security protected minister, I recognise how some people have construed this as me seeking to avoid sanction. The PM wrote in response. It was a slightly cool letter, I thought, but he said, on the basis of your letter and our discussion, my decision is that these do not amount to a breach of the ministerial code. However, Braverman is fighting off yet another assassination attempt after the lefty rag The Guardian published leaks from the Civil Service that they supposedly fact-checked her statements to Cabinet. And in a two-pronged attack, the Cabinet Office are gunning for Boris Johnson after they handed over his checkers' diaries to police without permission, with the former PM and his allies readying themselves for a battle with the blob. So, Adam Brooks, the point is, this is what Sunak should have done a long time ago. He should have done the same thing with Dominic Raab and said there's absolutely no need for an investigation. My Deputy Prime Minister is not a bully, and I worry that it's only a matter of time before they come for Suella.
Why has it taken him 72 hours to do this? And I'll tell you the reason. He's in a position here. Suella Braverman is very, very popular with true Conservatives. Now, he needs to protect her to protect himself. If she goes and a so-called weaker or wet Conservative is put in her position, that will lose hundreds of thousands of Tory votes. So he's got to play it very clever here.
But I don't think he did play it clever, Christine. Well, no, he can't afford to lose it. But, Christine, don't you just want a Prime Minister who's going to say, like Boris Johnson said about Priti Patel, this is all rubbish, I stand by my Home Secretary?
He's not that mad. But, I mean, if what she did, which was basically inquire whether somebody as high profile as her could have a private speed awareness course, if that was against the ministerial code, then the ministerial code is wrong, because it was a perfectly innocuous inquiry.
She asked a question.
There was something you read out earlier on, and this is what's wrong with Rishi Sunak. You read this out as something that Tina Turner said.
Yes.
My legacy is that I stayed on course beginning to end, and this is it, because I believed in something. And that is Rishi's problem. He doesn't believe in anything. He's got himself there by, some would say, slightly foul means, not fair, and he doesn't know what to do with it.
Well, no, he hasn't been voted in. He hasn't been voted in by the country. He hasn't been voted in by his own party.
No.
And this was, I warned at the time, the huge risk of becoming Prime Minister with no mandate from anyone, seemingly apart from his globalist pals.
But start leading. He's not leading.
He's not
following.
No. But Matthew Laza, why do you keep on going for Suella? I mean, do you know what? I'm just going to show you. I just want to bring this Daily Star front page up again. I think the language around this woman is absolutely revolting. They say, what a surprise, Rishi's let off Cruella. You've got your vile party favourite, Alistair Campbell, describing her as Sewerella.
They can't
comparing her to a sewer.
Powerful women, can they?
I mean, why is the left so nasty about Suella Braverman? Do you have a problem with an ethnically diverse, strong woman on the right?
Absolutely not.
But you had a problem with Priti Patel too, so I'm just noting a bit of a trend here.
Priti Patel broke the rules as well.
No, she
what do you
didn't.
mean as well? Suella hasn't broken the rules.
Priti Patel certainly broke the rules, and we don't know whether Suella has, because Rishi Sunak hasn't got the guts to get his independent advisor on ministerial
Because look at what happened with Raab. It opens up an unnecessary Pandora's box which stops the government doing what the government should do.
You have to have the procedures are there in place. You have to, Rishi can't...
It's a speeding ticket, Matthew.
Exactly. And if she'd done what any of us would have done if we got a speeding ticket and gone and done the course...
But she isn't one of us.
She has to
She's
go...
leading
have you
this
done a speed
country.
awareness course?
I can't drive. I'm a not driver.
I've done a couple
been one
of speed
as well.
awareness courses. They're
both very naughty.
She would have to have turned up with all her bodyguard and detectives and security, but the whole thing would have been completely
It's a waste of a
disruptive
whole
for
day as
everybody
well.
else.
A government minister shouldn't have to do
the
that.
same rules apply to all of us.
She didn't
That's
do
the
it. She
point.
didn't ask for the rules to be changed. She sought advice. And the civil service are so desperate to depose her. And I think it's really sad, actually, that you don't think that the government and the Home Secretary should actually be focusing on what really matters.
I absolutely think...
Which means stopping this invasion of our southern border, bringing down net migration. That's what matters.
You know, we've seen the Tories totally fail on that over 13 years, and that's why...
Do you think your party would do it any better?
Yes, I do. I think we need a party with a plan to stop the boats rather than talk.
We've finally got a Home Secretary that's talking
and that's why
tough.
Britain needs a change.
She's finally talking tough. Again, what you said there, to me, it seems like
It's all
there is a
talk.
problem
Well,
with
yeah, but the
powerful
difference with
women.
Suella is she wants to
Yeah,
do
but
it.
it seems to be a problem with
Didn't Pretty
powerful women
failed?
of Asian descent. The lefty media and the civil service went for Priti Patel, and they're going for her. They're not going to give up, Dan.
Indeed.
They're not going to give up.
Now, look, last week saw plummeting viewing figures for This Morning ahead of Philip Schofield's bombshell exit from the show. And with Dermot O'Leary and Alison Hammond standing in as hosts, ratings have suddenly seen a jump, as Monday's instalment attracted nearly 60,000 more viewers than Philip's last episode on Thursday. Meanwhile, a shocking This Morning interview with the then Prime Minister David Cameron has re-emerged and gone viral, which suggests that Schofield was fortunate to have lasted as long as he did. You might remember this, but you probably haven't seen it in a while. It was conducted in 2012 in the wake of the Jimmy Savile scandal. Watch as Schofield spearheads a witch hunt against alleged Tory paedophiles, which would prove to be based on totally made-up accusations.
Took me about 3 minutes last night to continually find a list of the same names. I have those names there. Those are the names on a piece of paper. You know the names on that piece of paper. Will you be speaking to those people?
No, I think, Philip, this is really important, right? Because there is a danger, if we're not careful, that this can turn into a sort of witch hunt, particularly against people who are gay. And I'm worried about the sort of thing you're doing right now, giving me a list of names that you've taken off the internet.
David Cameron was totally right there. Philip Schofield was completely wrong. And reacting to that online, Cameron's former top aide, Craig Oliver, has actually opened up for the first time and revealed what went on and how Schofield was operating. So he wrote, "I was standing 10 feet away. The PM was supposed to be on talking about a dementia policy, and Schofield suddenly claimed he had done 3 minutes of research to uncover alleged Tory paedophiles. The names on his card were visible, and he somehow thought that was his only mistake." And Oliver went on, "Looking back, I think Cameron's decision not to complain about Schofield's stunt saved the TV presenter. He sent the PM a handwritten apology that lamented the fact names on the card had been revealed, but with no understanding he'd contributed to a witch hunt." And it is really fascinating looking back at this interview in the context of now, isn't it, Christine?
Well, it was incredibly arrogant of him, and anybody could just freeze frame that moment when he handed the piece of paper across to Cameron, and there were the names. I mean, anybody could have seen what the names were. It was a grotesque thing to do. It was grotesque to do it anyway, but to ambush Cameron in that way. And I must say, you said Cameron was absolutely right. He came across as almost statesmanlike. I never thought I'd say that about Cameron, but you sort of kind of wish he was still around after seeing that.
And it's just interesting, isn't it, Adam? Because at the moment, lots of people close to Philip Schofield are saying, "Oh, there's a witch hunt against Philip Schofield as a gay man," but that's what he was doing.
But he did that, and now suddenly his brother's a convicted paedophile. You couldn't make it up.
There isn't
You could not make this up.
Is there a witch hunt against Philip Schofield, Matthew Larson?
No, absolutely not. There's just common sense prevailing, which it should have done in 2012. I mean, it was a couple of years before. I remember taking Ed Miliband to the This Morning studio, and we were expecting something similar.
What happened?
Well, it was the time I was there with him, it was okay, but the previous time he tried to pull a stunt about the cost of a pint of milk or whatever. It was all about Philip Schofield, and it wasn't about the programme, and that's what ultimately has led to his death.
Not a nice man, Dan. Not a nice man.
Matthew Larson, Adam Brooks, Christine Hamilton, my superstar panel. Do stand by, though, because amid slimy claims that civil servants have to fact-check Suella Braverman's statement to Cabinet, was Rishi Sunak right to put the Home Secretary through a stitched-up ethics investigation? We'll debate that soon. But next, as investigators at the US Heritage Foundation continue to press for Prince Harry's visa application to be made public amid claims he may have omitted former drug use on it, are the walls closing in on the Duke of Delusion as both the US and UK start to close the doors on him? Well, Samuel Dewey, here's the the outside counsel of the Heritage Foundation. He's the man behind this case. He's going to join me with exclusive information straight after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Jim Davidson's unmissable revelations on Philip Schofield coming up. But first, Prince Harry is quickly realising the meaning of the phrase, when it rains, it pours. After the fake car chase, losing a major court battle with the UK government, plunging global popularity and a host of other legal wrangles looming, the Duke of Delusion could soon be facing the explosive prospect of deportation from the United States for lying on his immigration visa about previous drug use. In his grim tell-all memoir, Spare, the Prince revealed how he's taken anything from cannabis and magic mushrooms to Class A drugs like cocaine. But US immigration laws say that any foreigner determined to be a drug user is classed as inadmissible. Now, the hugely respected US think tank, the Heritage Foundation, is battling Joe Biden's government to obtain Harry's visa application in full in a bid to uncover the truth. This is the brutal moment. Heritage Foundation's president, Kevin Roberts, told the Daily Telegraph that America wants Harry to go home.
2 or 3% of the population that loves the nonsense that Harry and Meghan spew, you don't have to worry about Americans being on their side. They're on Britain's side.
Should he be deported?
We don't like him being in America, and we would love for him to come back to you or somewhere. I guess we, as Americans, we see Prince Harry the same way you see President Biden. You can have him back.
Well, joining me live now is the man leading the legal charge against Harry and his visa, outside counsel at the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project, Samuel Dewey. So, Samuel, great to have you here tonight. Are the walls closing in on Harry staying in the US?
Well, we'll have to see, because we're in court, because we're facing obstruction and denials from the Biden administration. There's a clear public interest in understanding, did Prince Harry get preferential treatment? And we have a very strong case that these records should be made public, but they're fighting us. And we're going to have to be in court, and there will be litigation, and we're confident we will prevail, but it's going to be a long haul.
Because from what you know of Prince Harry's revelations of being a prominent and consistent user of illegal drugs, is there any way that he could gain access to the US if he were like you and me, an ordinary bloke?
I mean, our understanding from all the information is no, he probably wouldn't, or there would be a very lengthy process. And that's the problem this case illustrates. He is a global elite with a leftist ideology who has come to America, tried to make money off his title, while at the same time lecturing everyday Americans on how to live. And if he wants to lecture everyday Americans on how to live while using his royal title, then he should comply scrupulously with our rules.
And he hasn't. So it does lead you to suggest that there is some form of special treatment going on, because, as you say, he's not just on the left, is he? Before the last election, him and Meghan made it very clear that they were encouraging US voters to boot Donald Trump out of office and vote for Joe Biden.
Oh, absolutely. And this is part of a broader issue. The Biden administration is ignoring our laws on immigration. Our southern border is a mess. It's just like the southern border in the United Kingdom, and they're opposing any way to fix it, and they're ignoring the laws that are there. The only consistent principle is special treatment for their friends. So we have a lot of suspicions here. They're going to throw up their roadblocks, but we're going to get to the truth.
Yeah, so I was going to say, what is your plan? How can you get to the truth, given it seems very clear to me that the Biden administration are trying to frustrate your case, which, by the way, I completely support. But what are you going to do?
Well, fortunately, the final say in these matters is had by a federal judge, and we're in federal court right now. We filed our complaint. We filed motions, and we're going to litigate the case in court, because the Biden administration may be able to ignore the American people. They may be able to ignore the media, but they can't ignore a federal judge. And that's unfortunately where we are. The only way to get them to comply with lawful FOIA requests is to sue them, fight them in court, and get a federal judge to order disclosure.
Of course, there may be a change of government in the US in the not too distant future. Do you think there could be a seismic change that could threaten Prince Harry's residency under a, say, return of President Trump to the White House, or, given what we're hearing tonight, a President Ron DeSantis to the White House?
I mean, I think there will be a seismic change in border policy, and there will be an actual serious attempt to defend American sovereignty and defend the border. And I think as part of that, certainly you will see a very careful examination not only of what laws did the Biden administration ignore, but what favors did they do for the global liberal elites that espouse their message and lecture the common American people from their 8-figure mansions.
So if the law is followed, Samuel, is there a possibility that Prince Harry could find himself deported from the US?
That is certainly one of the many possibilities. We just don't know what happened because we don't have the information. because they are withholding it from us.
But if he
and
lied,
that's the problem
if he lied and
with
you
this
can prove that he lied on the form, could he then be deported?
Yes, it is commonly the case that if you are found to have lied on an immigration form, that you will be deported.
Wow. Wow. So he could be in deep trouble. So you've got to keep fighting this, though, because it's important. You know, you can't boast about breaking the law and then have the red carpet rolled out, because there are so many Brits who want to enter the US. This is a really, really fascinating case. Keep fighting the good fight. That's Samuel Dewey, outside counsel at the Heritage Foundation's Oversight Project. But coming up in Uncancelled, as Philip Schofield looks around in vain for supporters after his reign of terror came crashing down, Britain's favourite entertainer, Jim Davidson, gives his first-hand account of being confronted by Scove's two-faced treachery when he appeared on the This Morning sofa. That unmissable account soon. But first, in the media buzz, on the eve of D-Day, as we stand on the brink of becoming immigration nation, Britain, with record figures due to be published tomorrow, will the PM follow through on his hardline rhetoric when it comes to this crisis? Or is he all talk? We're going to thrash that one out as my superstar panel return in just a moment.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news site now in our media buzz, and more front pages are in. The Guardian leads with calls for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to delay or cancel Boris Johnson's resignation's honours list over fresh Partygate allegations. Goodness me. The Eye leads on the looming interest rate rise next month to fight core inflation. That will see the cost of goods and services soar. But it's not all doom and gloom, as the paper reports that the overall inflation forecast will drop by 5% by the end of the year. And the Mail leads with the head of Scotland Yard's VIP sex abuse inquiry facing allegations of gross misconduct following an investigation by the newspaper. And there she is, Tina Turner. She was simply the best, 1939 to 2023. Really sad news tonight that the Queen of Rock and Roll has died. My superstar panel return now. The broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Now, in what is both a humiliating and alarming moment for the Tory government and the country, tomorrow immigration figures will be published, which are expected to show it at record levels. The official statistics could see legal net migration hit 700,000 or more for 2022, dwarfing the previous annual high of 504,000. And while Rishi Sunak has rightly warned today in the Daily Telegraph that uncontrolled immigration leads to unmanageable pressures on housing, schools and hospitals, he must also know that the time for talking is over and that tomorrow is D-Day for Britain as an immigration nation. Even open borders proponent Slippery Starmer seems to understand the significance of the moment as he and Sunak traded blows at PMQs earlier.
The Prime Minister stood on 3 Tory manifestos, each one promised to reduce immigration, each promise broken.
What is the honourable gentleman's contribution? There are absolutely no ideas. There is absolutely no ideas, absolutely no semblance that there would be any control. Why? Because he believes in an open-door migration policy.
I mean, Christine Hamilton, the problem is the time for talk is over. Talk is cheap now from Rishi Sunak. I mean, this is a crisis. This is an immigration crisis.
It absolutely is. And successive Tory governments have frankly lied to the electorate year after year after year. I mean,
we've been gaslit.
In the last 20 years, we've had a 15% increase in our population, which is completely unprecedented and it's untenable. England is now the most populated country in Europe. We've overtaken the Netherlands. Cameron said he was going to get immigration down to the tens of thousands. Well, I mean, that is completely laughable now. We've added 4 million to the population since 2010. That's only 13 years. I mean, it is absolutely... And all they have done now is they've suddenly said, oh, some of the students can't bring their dependents. Well, I guess that it's news to quite a lot of people, not necessarily GBNews viewers because they're so well informed, but news to quite a lot of people that students were just able to bring in their dependents just like that. I wasn't aware.
It's horrifying.
Horrifying.
Utterly horrifying. And PhD students still can.
That's the only thing that they've done to curb immigration as far as...
135,000 last year, dependents.
I mean, Matthew Laza, the issue is, though, and I'm not saying it's an excuse, but Labour has no plan to control the borders either. And Sunak was right, wasn't he, there when he said to Starmer that he's all about open borders? I mean, remember, for a long time, Starmer was the greatest proponent of freedom of movement, even after we'd left the EU.
Well, if we had freedom of movement now, we'd have lower net immigration. I mean, that's one of the consequences of Brexit, is that immigration from outside the EU has skyrocketed. But it's simply not true to say that Labour doesn't have a plan. Labour has a clear plan.
What is it?
Well, on the boats, it's to sort the process.
No, but on legal migration. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the...
Well, on legal migration, the plan is to sort out weather shortages, to properly enforce the Australian-style point system, and to actually do the things that the Tories should have been doing for 13 years.
I'm pretty sure the left attacked the point system as being...
No, we proposed we were trying to introduce the points-based immigration system when we were sadly thrown out of office in 2010. Since when, as Christine has rightly said, immigration has skyrocketed because with the Tories, it's all talk and no action.
The problem is, Adam, I can't trust Rishi Sunak on this. No. Because I was mentioning it to Richard Tice earlier. When he was on the plane to the G7 just a few days ago, Sunak was almost trying to dismiss legal immigration is not a problem, these numbers. He was talking all about illegal migration, but this is a huge problem.
Again, these MPs don't live in the real world. People like us do. And I've been tweeting, I found a tweet from 5 or 6 years ago where I was saying that our services are going to become overwhelmed, schools, doctors, our health service. You know, I could foresee what was going to happen. Now, why can't these MPs... The numbers that are coming into this country are a disgrace. And, again, I'm very worried what they're going to swell to under a Labour government. But this government and previous Conservative governments have let the country down.
Yeah, because, Christine, this is changing the country as well. I mean, 100%. It's changing the demography of this country, but it's also changing the services in this country. Why do we think we have such a housing crisis? Well, we're only building 200,000 a year, but we're letting 700,000 a year in. This is insanity.
It's complete insanity, and it all really started. The floodgates opened when Tony Blair got in 1997, and he did it deliberately to change.
Mandelson even admitted that.
That's what they wanted to do. I mean, in pre-1997, the average was 50,000 a year. 50, that's all. And now
which is what it should be at.
Which is about what it should be.
What should the numbers be now,
policy.
Adam?
Well, they've got to get them down to, you know, I'd like to see them in the tens of thousands, but that's not going to happen.
Well, no, it should happen, though.
No.
Should happen.
But, Dan, we've got asylum seekers that go back to those countries on holiday.
What does Labour want in terms of a figure? Because that's what we need to start talking about, right? Would Labour want tens of thousands?
I think what Labour wants is a system that works. The first thing to do is we need the small boats crisis sorted, which the Tories have singularly failed to do. And then we need to manage migration. And I think one of the big challenges for Labour is it's going to have to be honest about our relationship with Europe if we want to go back to a system where people come here to work and then go home, which is what happened with the EU. But by sorting the processing out, sending people who shouldn't be here home, and by doing a proper deal with the European partners who have just laughed in the face of this Tory government for the last 3 years.
He's considered the only man who could torpedo Donald Trump's big return to the White House. And after months of speculation, juggernaut US politician Ron DeSantis has tonight officially filed to run in the 2024 election. The woke-slaying Republican Florida governor who's taken on trans extremists at Disney, banned vaccine mandates, prohibited future lockdowns and outlawed central bank digital currencies teased the big announcement with this patriotic video last night.
They call it faith because in the face of darkness you can see that brighter future. A faith that our best days lay ahead of us. But is it worth the fight? Do I have the courage? Is it worth the sacrifice? America has been worth it. Every single time.
DeSantis, who Trump mockingly calls Ron DeSanctimonious, will launch his campaign with Elon Musk on Twitter in less than 30 minutes from now. His team will publish a longer and more explosive patriotic election video afterwards. The 44-year-old young bloke, seen as Trump's biggest rival for the Republican nomination, but polls show he's trailing far, far behind the former president. What's certain is that, unlike sleepy Joe Biden's Democrats, the Republican Party definitely has big stars, at least 2 big stars among its ranks. Maybe the issue is, though, are they going to tear themselves apart over the next few months? This is going to be an absolutely fascinating race. Matthew Laza, Adam Brooks, Christine Hamilton, do stand by, because coming up, as runaway royal Prince Harry loses his legal attempt to be able to buy his own private army of honest UK bobbies, while Meghan seemingly distances herself, quitting him in the US, is it the beginning of the end for the Duke of Delusion? My panel debate that as we crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union jackass. Soon we'll also pay tribute to Tina Turner, who has died aged 83. But next, in Uncancelled, as Philip Schofield looks around in vain for supporters as his reign of terror comes crashing down, Britain's favourite entertainer, Jim Davidson, gives a first-hand account of being confronted by Schofi's two-faced treachery when he appeared on This Morning Soap. Cannot wait to hear about this unmissable account. Jim Davidson live in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Now, in a week to forget for woke ITV bosses, the broadcaster is now struggling to keep a lid on speculation around the fallout with Philip Schofield after his departure from This Morning. Former host of the show, and now my brilliant colleague here at GB News, Eamon Holmes, hilariously slammed Scove's pantomime exit from the show on GB News Breakfast.
This course follows the big announcement on Saturday from Philip Schofield that he was stepping down.
Oh, stop, please, let's just stop this. He was sacked, right? All this nonsense about giving him credit. I've decided to step down. I'm sure you did. Sure you did. Here's your P45. Now step down. You know, why do we propagate this language? I've decided to step down. And she says, oh, the couch will not feel the same without him being there. Well, she wanted him not there, so what's she moaning about the couch not feeling the same for? I mean, they deserve each other, I suppose.
But the charade at woke ITV continues, with bosses feeling obliged to hit back at Eamon, with the channel spokesperson telling the Evening Standard tonight Philip Schofield's decision to step down from This Morning was, as his statement made clear, a decision agreed between Philip and ITV. Yeah, right. Jim Davidson, Britain's favourite entertainer. You had first-hand experience of Phil's behaviour while appearing on This Morning, I believe. So what was it like? What went down?
Well, first of all, I got to clear up a thing. A while ago, I wasn't supporting Philip Schofield, but I said he shouldn't be punished for the sins of his brother, and I still believe that. However, it doesn't stop the fact that Philip Schofield is a two-faced. Oh, I think the sound went off then, because I was invited. They should have them asterisks coming out. Pixelated speech. I was invited on that This Morning programme by him, and I don't know who he was with, a lady. It was after I did that awful Hell's Kitchen where I fell out with someone, and they made it look like it was some homophobic row. It wasn't. It was edited. And I remember saying to the funny ITV people, they said, oh, what you said could be offensive. We want to ask you to leave. I said, well, edit that bit out. If you think it's offensive, edit it out. Not live. It was pretend live. So I went in to try and put the record straight. And as I walked in, Philip got up, and I'd seen him ages ago when he was in Dr. Dolittle. He played a part on stage, which without an autocue to read as well. Imagine that. And he was quite good considering. And I spoke to him, and as much as you can, it was his night. So I was now faced with him, and I walked in the studio. Oh, Jim, thank heavens you're here. Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, I thought you were great on Hell's Kitchen. I don't care what people say, and you're accused of this, and I know you slightly differently. I'm ever so pleased you're here. And then we're coming back out of commercial break, and cue Philip. So now we have a controversial comedian, Jim Davidson, and he turned to me with a face like thunder and said, "So why were you behaving in such a homophobic way to that man? What made you do this?" I mean, on he went. I talk about change just like this. And I felt last night, why don't you, what's up with the sound on here tonight? and so I was faced with this person who, and I think it was even written on his autocue as well. I think he gets up in the morning and, "Hello, Philip, how are you? I would like some toast, please, and a cup of tea." You know, crazy.
But I guess the point being he's a very different man off camera to on camera.
Yeah, changed like that. Absolutely changed like that. And was awful. I mean, awful, staring right through me. It was, I've never seen anything quite like it. I mean, I've got broad shoulders and I just plodded on.
Jim, it's been...
if he wants to try and bully me, imagine what it's like to lesser mortals.
Well, indeed, and we know that. But, Jim, it's been a fascinating week in TV. I want to just play you and get your reaction to a couple of the key moments. So this is where it all got very awkward between Holly and Phil.
Hello, and welcome to your Mondays this morning. It is nice to be back.
Nice to
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm much better. I mean, I had a sort of wobbly week and a half. Don't hurt yourself.
Phil, put your knees on the ground.
Oh, they've got to stay on the ground?
Yeah, otherwise that's like...
Otherwise, that you're really, go out, come back.
I'm going. Be good. Don't be naughty.
I'll do my best. Happy
I'll
to
see
hold
you.
the fort.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, goodbye now. Goodbye.
Say hello to Saran Jones and save me a piece
and
of
don't
cake.
forget,
Goodbye.
it's Your Majesty.
Oh, Jim, it was bad, wasn't it?
Well, I don't wish to be... I don't know Willie Hollaby that much, whatever her name is, but they seem to be joined at the hip a little bit. There's a bit of compliance going on there. Listen, I'm a GB News fan. I used to sit and have that television programme on all day. Not anymore. I have GB News. I just love the way Nigel Farage's head is going to come off in a minute, isn't it?
And then, OK, well, given you haven't seen it, I'm going to also play you the moment, Jim, when Dermot O'Leary and Alison Hammond gave Schofield the coldest send-off in TV history. After 20 years on that sofa, he was gone in 30 seconds.
Morning. Hello and welcome to Mondays This Morning. Now, we can't start today's show without paying tribute to the man who spent the last 2 decades sitting on the This Morning sofa, Philip Schofield. So, as a show, everyone on and off screen at ITV and This Morning want to say a huge thank you to Phil for what he's done to make the show such a success over the last 21 years. Quite simply, we all know he's one of the best live television broadcasters this country has ever had. And we and all the team wish him all the best for the future. Yeah.
Jim, that was it?
Right.
After 20 years.
Yeah, I know. And they must be thinking, I wonder if in a little while's time someone will be talking about us two going. I don't know what Dermot O'Leary does. He's another autocue reader. He's quite nice. I like the lady. I think she's great fun and she's very bubbly and whatever. And but do you know, I think poor presenters on ITV, they're governed by the person in the background that tells them what to say, when to say it, how to behave. You know, not like you, Dan. You
no, and that's why viewers
are
turning off to GB News and also to your brilliant Ustream. And, Jim, I know you've been speaking on Ustream over the past couple of days about what's going on in the Tory party. It's very disturbing, isn't it, this witch hunt from the mainstream media, the Snivel Service woke blob. First they came for Suella Braverman. Rishi got like a little bit of a backbone. But now, Jim, they want to revive Partygate and have referred Boris Johnson to 2 separate police forces. Can you believe this?
I know, and the police forces are not in enough trouble. Why don't they start doing what the police forces are for and policing our country correctly? Okay,
Yes.
and as for that Labour front bench, it's getting more like the Muppet Show every week. I mean, how many other oddments are going to sit next to Keir Starmer? And he was down at the NHS saying, what a fantastic time it is, I'm going to go up to Nottingham. Well, while he was down the NHS, he should have got his adenoids done because he's really sounding annoying to me, or blow that nose. And all they want to do is trip people up. They haven't got a policy at all. But there's, Suella Braverman, she should resign because she was nicked for speeding, and she asked a civil servant, would it be possible to have a one-to-one speed awareness course? And they're good, those speed awareness courses. I've had 26 of them. But,
they really work, then.
When I did a Zoom one, everyone was taking pictures of me. It was ridiculous. So you can understand. She asked the question, no, Home Secretary, you can't do that. Fair enough, she'll have the points. And she's only got 3 points, which is the same as Charlton Athletic this season, so it's not too bad.
Jim Davidson, Britain's favourite comedian. So good to speak. We'll speak very soon, Jim. Thank you. But it's time now to reveal tonight's greatest Britain Union jackass. Christine Hamilton, your nominee for GB.
Well, I've done a bit of a screech of brakes and a reverse turn in view of the very, very sad news about Tina Turner.
Oh, of course,
and she is my honorary greatest Britain. I mean, I was a bit of a rock chick when I was younger, grew up to her. She was the soundtrack of my youth, and she was quite simply the best.
I was really emotional hearing this news tonight. A true great of the industry. She went through so much, and it's really sad. Look at her. Look, she'd battled illness for a very long time, and that was with the cast of the musical in the West End. I can only imagine what it was like in that theatre tonight, because the musical is absolutely sensational, but very emotional. I really want to go back again, actually, to pay tribute. Adam Brooks, your nominee.
My nominee is the late Lee Rigby. On Monday, it was the 10-year anniversary of his barbaric murder on the streets of this country. I don't believe the media has made enough of it, and I also believe that a memorial day should be set up in his name.
And his brilliant son, keeping his memory alive, I thought that was so powerful. Matthew Larsey, your nominee.
Well, my choice was before we heard about Tina Turner, but it's also the woman responsible for the soundtrack of my youth, Kylie Minogue, for just being fabulous, and for 35 years on from still about to enter the top 40 again. So
Yeah, that's the great thing, because you know what? Tina Turner had her big comeback when she was in her 40s and released all of the big songs like What's Love Got to Do With It, The Best, and I love the fact that Kylie Minogue is doing the same thing in her 50s. It was her birthday at the weekend.
Yeah.
No, of course, look, only one winner tonight, Tina Turner. I mean, of course, the whole world is celebrating her. She was the queen of rock and roll. What a loss. Absolutely. Union jackass time now, though. Christine Hamilton.
Well, I'm afraid it's a perennial favourite. It is Prince Harry, because he honestly thought that he could buy our bobbies for his own personal protection. If he can do that, then any Tom, Dick or Harry throughout the world who's got enough money can do it. It wasn't on. It was a crazy legal action.
No, indeed.
And he's paying the price.
Adam Brooks, your nominee?
My nominee is Sir Ed Davey, for saying women can have a penis.
Oh, yeah, let's see it. Let's see it again. It's beautiful, but terrible.
Vast majority of people whose biological sex is a woman when they were birth, they feel they're women, so they get the same they feel their gender the same as at birth. But there's a very small number of people who don't feel like that.
So a woman can have a penis?
Well, quite clearly.
Quite clearly, Matthew Larsey, your nominee.
It's Jeremy Hunt for having left or maintaining inflation in Britain still twice as high as the States and higher than our neighbours in France and Germany. We're all paying the price.
I'm going to go with Ed Davey and Adam Brooks, the Lib Dem leader, who could well be the next Deputy Prime Minister. Like Keir Starmer, he has no idea of basic biology. Or has the woke mind virus just invaded that very small little brain? Christine Hamilton, Adam Brooks, Matthew Larsey, my fabulous superstar paddle, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your company tonight. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Next up, though, headliners with their irreverent take on tomorrow's newspapers' front pages. But from me, good night.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its